So guys, I do want to do a bunch of videos today, and I want to start with tough videos. And I want to talk about, like two things that have happened to me. And I want to talk about the shower incident. And what happened was that when I was living, at home, really, my dad would have a habit of just punching and pummeling and banging on the bathroom door, or kicking on the bathroom door when I took a shower for too long. Like his rule was like 5 minutes in the shower. And then also too that I know like one time I took too long of a time and he really got in my face and like saying, no, what are you doing in there? What are you doing there? And sometimes he had this thing too where he almost like he wanted me to say something like, oh, well, I was masturbating or I was touching myself because, it's just like one of those things too where your parents want to like humiliate you and be like, oh, well, maybe you're taking a long shower because you're jerking off. I grew up in a really cold house, so sometimes I always like the sensation of warm water, really. Um, and then I also know like one time that happened where my dad was pummeling the bathroom door, and then he said something like, okay, well, you ruined my morning, so therefore you need to pay me $5 for our coffee because you taking too long in the shower, it ruined my morning. And he looked like, what, if I didn't have that money, he's going to explode in anger. So what happened was I didn't have any money on me, and I had asked my brother and begged him that, my dad was about to go into, just an explosion of emotions, really, because that's just how he was, really. And then also, too, he's one of those parents, too, that if he gave me an allowance, $20 a week to walk the dog or whatever, I didn't have any money, he would be like the Spanish Inquisition, be like, okay, what's going on, really? I want every single cent to be accounted for. I need to write down every, way your money has been spent, really. Just not, that type of thing, really, where it's just like that. So there's two things I want to say about this. That I think that, in fairness, if I have a kid, like the rule would be like 10 minutes a shower, not like 5 minutes. The other thing too is, I remember, and just to go back to another story is that I had like skin condition, like Tenay varicose. That's when your skin's all blotted, really. One of the reasons was because I didn't shower that much in high school, and then also we had a rule which was that if you have a bath towel, you had to use that for like 3 or 4 days, really, instead of just what most people do is that when you're single, it's like a new towel, a towel for every single day or a towel every other day. I usually do a towel every single day, a new towel every single time I use a shower, just because I'm single, and that's not a lot. But if you have like 4 or 5 people that you're living with, especially kids, then that's like 50, 60 towels, that can add up, really. But that was also another thing. Like after track meets, I wouldn't shower, or sometimes my dad would be like, "Oh, you're kind of stinking, really." And I almost I almost had to tell him like, "Hey, Dad, the rule is because you have this rule that because you were pummeling on the bathroom door over me taking more than 5 minutes of a shower in a 24-hour period. What the hell is that, really? Like if I take another shower." What are you going to do? And sometimes he even said things like, what, you're taking a shower too long. I really want to go in there and grab your naked. Next time you take a shower too long, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to grab your naked ass and everything like that, really. So, again, I understand what my dad was trying to trying to be stern with me. But again, when you say things like, I'm going to grab your naked ass and whatever, that's a little too far, really. Again, if I had a daughter and she was taking too long of a shower and I was saying something like, what's going on? Are you bleeding, or do you need to shower a little bit more because it's your time of the month? Oh, well, if you take a little too long, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to drag your naked ass out of there. What would happen if she told a teacher in high school? DCF will be called, and then, then they'll be like, okay, this guy is a freaking pervert if I did that, or if the role, or if I did that and I had a daughter, really, in that hypothetical, or if, I was a woman, if I was a daughter and my dad was, if I was a woman instead of a man, and my dad was doing that to me and I was a woman, and I told my teachers that, because that's another thing. And then I also will say that again, I'm happy my dad didn't have daughters, because if they had to menstruate and other things like that, like women need extra showers. That's what they say biologically. Women need extra showers, really. I can see them having infections or other things like that, because if you're gonna have somebody who's really too cheap over water, really, it is what it is. And then also, too, I know my brother and my other relatives take long showers, but it seemed like my dad always kind of bullied me, where it's almost like if I'm taking too long, he's willing to pummel the door and whatever, really. Maybe Byron's too much of a nice guy. And other things like that. But yeah, I used to shower a lot when my parents were not home, Or I know, like, when I had a girlfriend, sometimes I would shower at her place, or I would say, I would even come close to asking one of my friends at high school, like, hey, like, can you buy me a bathing suit, or do you have a spare bathing suit that, I can keep, really, wash it and I can keep it so I can, like, shower at school, because my parents, because after track meet, whatever, I can't shower at home because I'm gonna get that pummeling on the door, really. So I want to go down and talk about this a little bit. If I was the parent, I would say the rule is like 10 minutes. And if it's a little bit longer, I'll be knocking on the door and I'll be like saying, hey, you know what? It's 10 minutes, what's going on, really? If it's like 15, 20, then I can understand, being a little strict and saying that's inconsiderate because, nobody showers that long and you're holding up the bathroom thing, really. You're holding up everybody, and that type of thing, really. But 5 minutes is way too little for a shower, and again, this is not the military, because I know in the military I've heard stories like they run you through a shower circle and like they put you, they stand you, and then you take off your bath towel, run through like a circle of like water, really, and then you're done for the day, really, because they have to get, everybody has to get like some exposure, really. But yeah, that's just not right, really. And I think that, as I said, that it goes down to also double standards. Like if I have a kid and they're taking too long in the shower, if I'm knocking on if I'm doing it for my son who's 17 years old in that hypothetical, I would do that to my daughter who's 17 as well, or I would be doing that to like the 8-year-old, whatever. Like everybody gets the same treatment, because I do not believe in that thing too of, well, I'm going to be harder on one kid than the other kids. I'm going to bully one kid and not bully the others, type of thing, really. But ultimately, too, I don't, like, when I was in college and when I was like, when I first like moved out of college, when I started living with my brother, sometimes I would take showers that were like an hour long, really, just because it was kind of meditative, almost like, like being under a waterfall, really. And I can understand too, again, that being way too long, really. But yeah, that's what happens when you live in a household with way too many restrictions. If you're always strict about things, then people are just going to want to do the opposite. But definitely, as I said, really, I think that with parenting and other things like that, sometimes just always pummeling, the bathroom door. And then also, I was misdiagnosed with autism, so my dad kind of almost probably did that because he likes to see me jump or startle or whatever. And it's also like the other thing too, that I've had like guests or family members stay over, and my dad never did that to them. So it was always like, that thing too of like, what I've always said about older generations, where their attitude was like, if I disrespect my son, if I slap them, if I punch the bathroom door, and I pummel the bathroom door, or I kick the bathroom door, or I threaten to drag their naked ass out of it, that's going to teach them to be tough. That's going to teach them respect. That's going to teach them discipline. No, that teaches them, you're the kid. I can treat you whatever type of way. I have the right to threaten, to drag, to touch your naked body, really, because I'm the adult. I'm the adult. I can say whatever the hell I want to my kids. I'm the adult. I can treat you whatever type of way. I'm the adult. I can disrespect you, really. I'm the adult. I can have, I can have like uncleanliness standards, because 5 minutes is not enough. I used to have really bad acne, skin blotches and other things like that. And, we can all agree that some of it can come from like less than 5 minutes in a shower, or when you run track, forced to run track and you do other sports and you're sweating all day. Hey, you know what? I'm not allowed to shower more than 5 minutes because my parents going to there's going to be pummeling on the bathroom door, really. So, 10 minutes is enough, really. I think if you do have a kid who runs track and sport, it's important that they shower afterwards, because you're trying to teach them, proper hygiene if they have extracurricular activities, really, that's important, really, but I think 10 minutes is fair enough, really. I think 5 minutes is too strict, but also you got to build up to that. You don't start with like banging and badgering the bathroom door, really. And then it's almost like nobody else is showering, really.